Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. As I'm going to be doing a talk on why internships and entry-level roles matter in tech. So my name is Alecia Cotterell. I'm Head of Careers at Teesside University, London. So to start off with, I've got a confession to make. I am a fraud amongst you all. I do not have a tech background. I actually work in careers and support students in the School of Computing. So hence why I've been lucky enough to come in today to talk to you all about the importance of internships in the sector. So, start off with a woohoo, with something quite positive. The fact that you guys are all here today means that there is some kind of interest in either taking on internships or learning more about that. So I think we're off to a great start in that sense. So let's see what we're working towards over the next 25 minutes. Firstly, I'm going to set the scene in terms of the internship and graduate landscape. Then I'm going to outline some barriers to taking on interns and why some organisations, particularly in the tech sector, might be reluctant to take them on. And then we'll be looking at solutions. So there'll be tips and resources to making internships a business success. I guess we'll do a who's in the room so I can know who the audience is. So is anyone here part of their hiring team for their organisation or company? Okay, great. Any founders or CEOs? Any coming from SMEs or startups that are looking to expand? Anyone here just wanting to give back? They like the idea of giving back to the next generation? Great. Any members of staff that always gets left with the interns? Okay. And anyone here just curious to find out more? Okay, fantastic. So really good mix here and today. So let's look at some headline benefits. Now, I may be preaching to the choir here because of obviously you've already got an interest, but just to remind ourselves, what are the benefits of internships? Firstly, it's about broadening the quality of prospective employees. So you can evaluate what someone is like in a really low-risk environment. Obviously, it's really difficult to get rid of people, isn't it, once they've passed probation and they're hired. So actually, in a really short-term, low-risk environment, you can evaluate what that person is like and whether they'd be a fit with your organisation. It helps to enhance students' interest and as well as accessibility. So for a lot of students, they may well have the technical knowledge, but perhaps they don't do very well with CVs and application forms and interviews. So providing internship opportunities means that you're accessing a wide range of students, and that will end up being a benefit to your company. It's a trial period as well. Very often companies will say they've had someone for a few months, and it means that once they do become permanent, if that's what happens, it's much more easier to onboard them later on. Cost savings. Now, I wasn't sure whether to put this in because I don't like the idea of calling interns cheap labour, but I guess it is what it is. So in terms of labour costs, the salary for somebody who was a permanent employee in that role, it wouldn't be as much. There's a cost savings there. And it also means that time can be released for value-added projects that you wouldn't necessarily have time to focus on. And there's also things like links with universities. So if you're linking with a university, you might be able to have access to academic research support on particular areas and emerging projects in your company and networks to other companies that the universities are working with. And obviously, as I'm sure many of you are aware, universities are hubs for sort of innovation, research, and then linking with businesses as well. And of course, you can't forget a bit of enthusiasm and fresh eyes from interns always helps with team. And lastly, corporate social responsibility. Obviously, all organisations have some type of responsibility to give back and support society, and this is a great way to do that. It goes without saying in terms of the rhetoric in the media about recruitment and hiring, particularly in the tech sector. I woke up one day and AI took my job. The shrinking number of entry-level tech roles, particularly in the UK. Some research there from the National Foundation for Education Research showed 50% in decline in tech job adverts between 2019 and 2024. So obviously there are some big impacts that are happening. Obviously positive in terms of innovation, but the impact that can have on recruitment. So in terms of setting the scene then, a bit more statistics for you. Adzuna, the recruitment website, found from their research that there was a 32% decline in general of graduate roles, apprenticeships, internships, and junior roles not requiring a degree, and that was in the last year. And there's been a 50% decline in tech job adverts, and programmer roles has been fallen by 70%, which obviously is huge. And again, you can have access to these slides afterwards, and I've put all the links to the sources in the slides. Now, obviously, the impact of this in terms of the recruitment decline is that there's a shortage of prospective workers available in senior level roles. So there's going to be this huge gap, isn't there, of people, who won't be able to go into these senior level roles. And also it creates qualification barriers. So because it's more competitive for those entry level roles, more qualifications are required that may not necessarily be needed for those roles. So obviously it creates certain barriers for students and graduates. AI automation, as everyone in the room is aware, there are less tasks traditionally available to early careers to build experience. Payroll costs. So some research by Instaprint found that 22% of businesses' biggest worry is actually rising payroll costs. And I've got some data there sort of to support that even further, particularly in the way in which on-demand tech, although it's scaling innovation, so, the way in which like Gen I, SaaS processes and so on, but it also means that there's a huge budget cost to that as well. However, one of the highest proportion of graduates are found in the information and communication sector. So some research done by Universities UK, looking at different sectors, if you look at information and communication, the majority of people in those sectors have degrees. So therefore, people who are at university and are studying, there is a need there, even though maybe currently there is a shortage at the minute. And even though there is less early year recruitment in the tech sector, the demand for digital skills continues to grow. So we're not recruiting them at the early start, but we still need digital skills. So it really creates a complex picture there. So on the screen behind me, you'll be able to see a graph, and this is from the Future of Work report, which is conducted by the World Economic Forum every year. So this is from 2025, although obviously the data was from 2024. And it surveys about 1,000 employers across the world, representing millions of workers, about their feelings and experiences about the job sector, skills, and the future workforce. And one of the questions that was asked was regarding core skills. So what skills would you class as core for a successful workplace, for a successful business? So I've got the top 20, as you can see on the screen. And as you can see, I've put some red arrows. Can anyone guess what kind of skills those red arrows are pointing to out of those 20? Your hand was up first. Fantastic. Yeah, is that what you were going to say? Yeah, soft skills. So the top 5 core skills from over 1,000 employers, all related to soft people skills, and 9 out of the 20, again, were related to soft skills. As we're aware, soft skills are crucial for innovation, problem solving, and cross-departmental collaboration. So, for example, you may have great technical skills, but if you don't have the communication skills to articulate why you might need extra funding for some infrastructure you're putting in place and persuading your CFO or whoever's in charge of the finances, it may not really get off the ground. And obviously, as time's going on, there's even more collaboration across departments. So these people skills are more important than ever. And there's a requirement of businesses that need future talent that can close these people soft skills gaps in order to make them a success. And actually, internships are a fantastic opportunity for exposure and exploration, where interns can learn these skills. And this obviously has positive implications for the future of the industry. Therefore, my question to those in the room are, what are you and your business doing to help interns grow and develop in these core skills areas? Because even if the technical roles, they're not as many, particularly at the entry level role, there's still the need to provide environments, realistic environments for students and grads to develop these core soft skills. So let's have a look at these barriers. For a lot of organisations, one of their main concerns is getting the right type of student. Somebody that has initiative, somebody has a good knowledge base. The worst thing you can do is open up your organisation, put lots of time and effort into onboarding, and then the person doesn't show up but doesn't tell you, they don't really work with the team. And that can be really off-putting. So there may be some of you in the room that might have had that experience. Maybe you've been a bit scarred from your experience of having an intern. There's also the concern about whether there'll be enough challenging or worthy work. Long gone are the days where you hire an intern to do the photocopying and make cups of teas. But equally, you do want something that's going to engage that person on that internship or grad scheme. And the challenge can also be like, will that be enough for them to get them engaged and to have them have the passion and the interest to continue going on whatever project that they're working on? There's also concerns about what, as an organisation, you're actually responsible for, like HR concerns, what duty of care is there. And you can have these discussions with universities. You often have a contact who can support in that way and provide some advice. And pay. They're often, years ago, internships weren't paid, but there is a growing trend to pay at least something to an intern for making a contribution to the organisation. But obviously, as I've previously mentioned, because there's so many issues with costs and so on, and particularly payroll costs, there is a reluctance. So sometimes for some organisations, and some of you may feel this way, if I can't pay in the first instance, I'm not going to take on an intern because I feel bad about having them come and work for us. However, let's look at it from a perspective of value. What could you offer? If you couldn't offer a salary, what could you offer an intern? Lunch goes a long way, guys. And that could be like a basic of an expense and a cost. But covering travel expenses and lunch would go a long way to helping an intern access your internship program in first instance, because you'll only get those who are privileged enough to be able to not have to work for the time they're working for you and still be able to afford food and rent and travel and so on. Something to bear in mind. Another thing might be a stipend. So once you complete this 12-week or this 6-month program, you'll get a certain amount at the end as a thank you for your contribution to our organisation. So in that way, it's back-ended, and maybe there are requirements. So this needs to be done in the project. Your attendance needs to be this way. And again, that helps to incentivise that intern while they're on that program. Also to consider is post-contribution profit. So perhaps if they've made a valuable contribution to an emerging area that actually makes the company some money, the intern receives a portion of that once. So that might be 6 months, even a year later down the line. But that intern knows that actually I've made this contribution and I'm going to get a reward for that because of how successful that's been in the business. And a question for you all, if an intern is adding value, even in a small way, why would you not recognise that through compensation? And if they are adding something, that should be recognised with some type of compensation, even if it is lunch and travel expenses. So let's have a look at some solutions then, because I'm really keen for you all to leave here with something to be able to continue these discussions in your respective organisations. So I've summarised these solutions as review, reframe, and resource. So let's look at review. Consider mapping out your company's current and emerging needs. This will enable you to focus on emerging and specialist areas by taking on an intern, and that could be the focus of the intern or current colleagues. So maybe there's a particular area that you'd love to have time to focus on. Maybe that's something the intern does, or it means you can release a particular member of your team to focus on that area, particularly as innovation keeps evolving. Looking at some needs mapping. So what new ideas keep coming up that you don't have time to focus on? Where are the leaks in your organisation? And that will mean different things to different people. Managing AI and addressing its flaws to maximise impact. Updating compliance frameworks and privacy regulations. So there's a lot, obviously, with the onset of AI and how that has impacts on security. So that lots of areas that organisations may want to be focusing on. So decentralising systems and the impact that has on traditional governance structures, new vulnerabilities, working across platforms and what that might open yourselves up to. And even things like staff training on new technologies. Are there new ways of working, new innovations that an intern could research as part of a project, learn about it, and then share with your team? So let's look at reframing. Think about redefining what an internship looks like and building up to a more formal arrangement. So perhaps for some of you in the room, the idea of taking someone on for 12 weeks is just too much. Let's look at what starting small would be. Live briefs. And I really like this idea because it doesn't require that much input, but the students still get a lot out of it. And I try and do as much as possible as I can within the curriculum for the students at my university. As an organisation, you'd outline a provocation or a realistic issue within your industry or company. It could be about quality coding, lead-in times, and then this could be pre-recorded. So you could record yourselves and your team talking about it and presenting it. Or you could come on site and do a one-off presentation to students, or create a brief pack, and then students over a course of time work on that. And they could either present their ideas to you thereafter or to their lecturers, but it gives them an opportunity to have some real world engagement with an industry and with an organisation, something they can apply to their CV, even though they've not done an official internship. So students will be supported by academic staff to complete a guided research project on the live brief. The company win through viable solutions, and the students gain those real world skills and experiences. And as I said, these are things that they can add to their CV as well. And what's great about activities like this, and ones I'll talk about in a moment, is that you often can easily identify the right type of student. So where those of you might have concerns about whether the student's going to be engaged or show initiative, getting involved with things like this, those students really stand out, and those would be the type that you want to take on in your organisation. So work experience days. Now, obviously, this would take a lot more time and input, but again, there is very much a collaborative approach from universities and institutions. Group visits, it could be tours of your facilities. I know some of you may be remote. Careers talks, day in the life, Q&A, giving advice, things like CV reviews. So, lots of sort of students who want to go into the tech sector, they're doing lots of projects. Maybe they've got things up on GitHub and so on, but they're not actually formalizing that in a CV. What kind of things would you like to see that would impress you in an interview that someone's doing in a side project? Portfolio reviews for their work, discussion tasks as well. So there's lots of options, and it could be just for the day, and you'd be surprised how much you can get done when it's student-led. So you give them a task or you give them some questions and they work on that together. And just to encourage you not to underestimate the impact, even if it is only for one day. And then there's obviously one-off projects. So it could be one day or a few weeks. So things like code reviews, writing, testing, debugging, managing AI in the coding process and addressing issues with output, system and process documentation, technical support, as previously mentioned, research on new technologies and best practice, exploring emerging opportunities and aligning that with the company vision, and issues around security, so like identifying flaws and protection recommendations. And even things like user research. So obviously an intern or graduate could be of any age, but they typically would be Gen Z, but they would be well placed for products that may align with Gen Z and are mostly used by them. So we've looked at reviewing, we've looked at reframe. So now let's finish this off with what resources there are out there. So what resources can you use to streamline the process? Internship proposals are a really great way to get out in the open what the needs are of your organisation and where an intern could viably fit in. And feel free to get in contact with me and I can send you a proposal that we send out to organisations, and it really helps them to understand where an intern could fit and what the benefits would be to the company, particularly if you are not the final decision maker in these types of things. So it would outline the skills, responsibilities, the need being met, and so on. Next is an onboarding checklist. Again, this can often be quite a barrier to taking on interns in terms of HR, but just following your normal HR processes. And again, universities are very open to being able to support with providing what a checklist would look like to help ease the streamlined process of onboarding an intern. A buddy system. Now, this is a really great idea where you might think hiring 2 interns would be double the work, but actually they can help each other. And that can sometimes take the pressure off you because they can check in with each other, hold each other accountable, and share workload as well. And joint working. Perhaps you could combine a role across different departments or even companies to spread the responsibilities. So university funding. So lots of universities, including Teesside University London, offer funded internships. So this is where the university pay the student a salary to work at your organisation for a period of a few months. So again, it's win-win. You get a student who is able to offer some ideas and support to your business, and the student gets a salary to enable them to be able to do the internship program. And this often has links to widening participation. So often the funding is related to young people who may be the first in their family or from demographics that don't typically succeed or get into university. And just on that as well, universities have a vested interest with regards to the outcomes of their students. So students don't just go to university and that's it. There's a huge accountability measures in terms of the type of work that students go into once they finish. And so there's a lot of funding and focus around next steps. And so there'll be a lot of willing from universities to collaborate in that way. And there's lots of charities and organisations where you could contact them and be part of their internship role. So these are all hyperlinks in here. So once I can share the slides with you. Upreach focuses on social mobility. So certain criteria, I think you have to be the first in your family to go to university and have a particular household income threshold. 10,000 Interns is a charity that provides internships focusing on ethnic minority groups to help them develop the experiences they need to get into graduate roles. So you could sign up to these organizations and promote your internship program. And again, you get a lot of support. I'm not sure about who's in the room in terms of where people are from, but I have put in the first three are UK only. And then we've got the Careers Hub, but these are for younger age groups. This is a national organisation, and you'll have a local one that you can get in contact with. There's also Virtual Internships, which is an organisation that works globally. So not only if you are a global company, that might be more suited for you. And knowledge transfer partnerships. Has anyone here heard of knowledge transfer partnerships before? Okay, oh, fantastic. So these are long-standing. I think they've been around since 1975. And they're basically UK government-funded schemes involving a three-way collaboration between a business, a university, and a graduate. And the graduate would be known as a KTP associate. And this graduate works at the company for 1 to 3 years, transferring academic knowledge to solve some strategic business challenge and drive innovation. So you get support with the salary, you get support with investing in your particular area of innovation and area of exploration, and getting expertise support from academics within that field. It's very popular. It's like a multi-million, if not billion-pound industry now. So do get in touch with a KTP office of a university that you might have interest in. Perhaps you're aware of universities that focus on specialisms of your organisations. Again, the hyperlinks are there so you can have a look about the processes. This is for UK-based businesses only. However, there may be ways around UK eligibility if you have, say, a UK base here, even if you're a global company, or working with another business that's based in the UK and then going alongside them. So there will be ways around that, but you'll need to look into that. And I can't be held accountable for any of the legality around that. Okay, so we're doing good for time as well. Key takeaways. The benefits of internships, which we are aware of. So it's the quality of prospective employees that you can create because you can evaluate what they're like in a really low risk environment. There's a drive and enthusiasm that comes from somebody who's keen to work in the industry but just needs that step up. And it allows you as an organisation to focus on emerging areas in your field. Entry-level roles may be on the decline, but digital skills are more in demand than ever. And finally, soft skills are core to supporting business success, which we're aware of. So while there may not be as many entry-level roles currently, obviously industries are constantly changing, there is still a need to provide realistic environments where interns and grads can develop these soft core skills. And in terms of solutions, have a think about reviewing where those gaps are, where emerging opportunities could be, reframing how you see internships. What could a low-risk, early start internship look like without having to invest in 6 months into a student? And also do have a look through those resources as well. So let's connect. So I'm hoping these QR codes work. So on the left, that's my LinkedIn profile, but you've got my name there so you can search me. And then on the right, fingers crossed, because I did it just before the start of the talk, that should show you the PowerPoint slides as well on Adobe, and then the hyperlink should work there. So thank you very much for listening, and then we've got a few minutes for questions. Thank you. Yes.
I have 2 questions.
Great.
First, from your experience at the university or what you know about the industry generally, do you know roughly what portion of students who intern at a company go back to work at that company afterwards?
Do you know, that's a great question. I don't know the statistics strictly, but it's a high number. And that's why internships are so popular, because very often those students end up staying at the companies once they graduate. So yeah, definitely a high number.
And then second question, if the number of entry-level roles generally is declining and becoming more competitive, wouldn't that mean that a company that decides to offer internships and will even pay their interns would be getting better people generally?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yes, because I guess there would be more competition, and then raising the standards in terms of getting the right type of applicants. And I guess it's trying to get that balance, because we want to give people a chance, because whoever's in the sector at the minute, time is going to move on, but we still want the sector to thrive and there's still to be upcoming people. So what we don't want is this gap where, because of what's happening at the minute, there's not many entry-level roles, so people are less likely to go into it, and then you've got this huge gap later down the line. So yeah. Any other questions?
Hi, great talk. So if companies are looking for soft skills as the core skills that they want, but would it be considered not a failure, but whose responsibility is it to teach graduates those soft skills if that's what companies want, but universities may not be having that as part of their curriculum?
Great question. And I think there's a lot of, it's quite vague, I would say. Personally, I think it's a multifaceted approach. So I think ultimately that young person needs to be aware, or student or grad needs to be aware of what's missing and what they need. I think universities, and they're getting better in terms of not just focusing on subject specialisms, but actually soft skills and those employability skills they need to develop. So at Teesside University London, I'm responsible for the employability curriculum. So for most of our courses, 20% is related to employability skills. So students do research and industry, they develop communication skills, they do presentations, they learn about digital skills and so on. And the organisations as well, because that's the real world. We can teach young people in the classroom as much as we want, but at the end of the day, they're only going to really learn once they're in those work environments. So yeah. Have we got time for one more, or have we run out of time? Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you.